What diet should you be consuming? One of the most common questions that we get at Hope Not Know, but we want to give you our take on nutrition that's a little bit different than the other takes that are out there. You see, most of the time people focus on what you should be eating, and they'll reference paleo, keto, plant-based, they reference intermittent fasting, the old school Atkins diet or cotton ball diet, all these crazy diets, the soup diet that have been established through time. And you get to wonder, well, this one seems to be having benefits for these people, so maybe I should be doing that. But we believe that before we ever have the conversation on what you should be eating, there's two stepping stones that we need to cover. And those two stepping stones are, what is your mindset, your thoughts about what you're eating, and then two, when are you eating? These two things, we believe, what you think and when you eat, are more important than what you're actually eating. So we want to cover those two steps, and then we'll get into the third step, which will hit the nutrition basics. But let's start with the importance of what we think about what we're eating. And this idea, this concept, isn't just something that we developed to be different from the other people out there, but it's something that the research has brought us to. It's something that working with thousands of different people that are all consuming different diets have brought us to. So this first study here is the Milkshake study by Leah Crum and her colleagues, one of my favorite studies that's ever been done. What they did is they looked at the hormone ghrelin. Ghrelin is a physiological hormone. When released, it helps to signal the behavior to go get calories, go get food, go consume. You're hungry, go get food. When ghrelin decreases, that signal helps to tell our body that we don't need any more food. We're good, we're full, we're satisfied. So in this study, they looked at the hormone ghrelin after they consumed two different types of milkshakes at different time periods. The first milkshake they consumed was the indulgent milkshake, the high fatty, sugary one, the one that when you go to an ice cream shop and you order a milkshake, this is the one that you want. The second milkshake was the Sensi shake, which briefly stated was the health conscious alternative. No sugars, no additives, low fat, that health conscious milkshake, the one that you would get to be healthy, while in reality, you really wanted that indulgent milkshake. So the subjects, they drank these milkshakes at different time periods, and then the researchers looked at the hormone of ghrelin. What they found is the group that had when they had the indulgent milkshake, their ghrelin levels decreased, which means that they felt satisfied. They felt like they were full. When the subjects had the Sensi shake at a different time period, what they found is that their ghrelin levels actually remained the same. They didn't decrease, meaning that they still felt like they wanted to consume more calories. They felt like they needed to go get more food. The takeaway, or I guess the curveball in this study, was that the milkshakes were actually the same. The only difference were the labels, meaning it mattered more about what they thought they were consuming. The brain saw the label on the milkshake, and the prediction changed because of that label, which then changed the physiological response of this hormone ghrelin, showing us that it didn't matter what they consumed, it mattered more their thought of what they were consuming. Next study we're going to look here gets into the when we consume. And not talking about intermittent fasting, that's something we'll touch briefly on later in this video, but when they consumed it, referencing a stressful event. So this first study here, they looked at when these subjects consumed a meal within 2 hours of a stressor, or 2 hours of a stressful event. What they found is that their body metabolized the meal in a way that added 104 calories to that meal. Now, 104 calories may not seem like a lot, but over a year, that adds 11 pounds onto a person. And we add that up over years of having food after stressful events, and we add up that 11 pounds over time, and we start to get the answer, where is this extra weight coming from? The next study here looked at what happens when you consume a healthy fat, but in times of stress. And to cut to the end of it and to give you that answer, what ended up happening is these things that were healthy fats were consumed and digested in a way that made them an unhealthy fat. So again, it shows us that it didn't matter what they consumed. What mattered is when they consumed it. That's led us to believe that it's more important about what you think about what you're eating and when you're actually eating it compared to what you're actually eating. We want to develop the habit and start to break down these barriers of our predictions of the food that we're consuming. We want to look at our schedule and see, do I have some ability to change the schedule where I can consume my calories when it's not after a stressful meeting, when it's not after a stressful event, but when I'm in a state that allows me to be rest and digest, allows me to look at my thoughts about what I am eating. Which leads to this question: what habits have you developed around your eating patterns? And I'll share a quick story about me identifying one of the patterns that I had. That pattern was I had to not eat ice cream for a summer. And not because it's sugary, not because it's fatty, not for particular specific health reasons, but because I identified something very important. I only wanted this after a stressful day. I didn't want it when it was a great day, when everything was flowing well. I didn't want it when everything lined up and I was in a good headspace. I wanted it when I was stressed. And I lived between two of the best ice cream stores in the city. I could go out the door, half a block to the right, go to one place, half a block to the left, go to the other place. I had to get really disciplined to not go and get these things and to break down that pattern, because what I realized is that for hope, we need self-agency. And self-agency is the ability to respond versus react to a situation. I was reacting to the stressors I faced in the day by consuming this sugary snack. I no longer wanted that. I wanted to be able to respond. And in order to respond, I wanted to better respond to those stressors. I want to have better ways to cope and adapt to those. Because then when I go to have a sugary snack, whether it's a slice of birthday cake or the occasional ice cream cone, that I can celebrate it. And I can be in a good mindset when I'm eating it, because I'm not eating it because I'm stressed, and then I'm not adding more calories and I'm not digesting it in a way that makes it more of an unhealthy type of fat. But I consume it in celebration. And I consume it knowing that, hey, this is okay for me to have. I don't need to beat myself up. This thing isn't helping me cope. I have other ways to be able to cope. I'm having this food to celebrate. So I want you to look at your habits and the patterns that you developed around eating. Why do you have these particular cravings? When do you reach for these salty and sugary types of foods? What patterns have been developed? How do you start to gather agency to be able to respond to those events and adapt better, that you're not reaching for the junk food in order to be able to cope? If we can do that, if we can take care of our mindset around food, if we can take care of when we're eating, then we can start talking about what we're actually eating. Now, any diet, we want to make sure that it's giving you energy, and it should never exclude a food group. If we hit our macros really well, carbs, proteins, and fats, we're going to get all the micros that are needed. We're going to get all the vitamins. We're going to get all the aminos. We're not going to have to supplement with all these different powders that are out there. So we want to make sure that you have a well-balanced diet, that you're getting all three of those major food groups. We want to stay away from fad diets. And how do you know you're in a fad diet? Well, check out this diagram right here. And you can look at this and start to identify, dang, am I falling for that fad diet that promises these results of quick weight loss? Because that's why most people are talking about nutrition, is for weight loss. Well, how do we actually get weight loss? You have to have higher caloric expenditure versus caloric intake, and that will allow you to be in a caloric deficit, in which you'll start to lose weight. You want to gain weight, it's the opposite. Your caloric intake needs to be higher than your expenditure. Now you'll be in a caloric surplus and you'll start to gain that actual weight. On that point, I want to cover two quick subjects with weight loss. Healthy weight loss is 1 to 2 pounds per week. Anything promising that you're going to lose 30 pounds in the next month, probably a fad diet. It's also not sustainable because you're not developing the habits or the discipline that is needed. We also want to look at, if you are gaining muscle, your weight may actually increase because muscle is more dense than fat. Actually worked with this one guy who was in his 70s, and his physician, he went in for a checkup and his physician said, your BMI is too high. I want you to go ahead and lose about 15 to 20 pounds. What he forgot to ask him is, what have you been doing in the past year? To that, he would have answered, I've been doing a lot of strength and power training. And in that, the conversation would have been a little bit different. Oh, well, muscle's more dense than fat. So that may be why your weight is actually up. But why don't we take a look at your waist circumference? And why don't we take a look at your body fat percentage? Because if your weight is higher, but your body fat percentage is lower, and your waist circumference is less, those are actually phenomenal health markers that you're achieving great health outcomes. So keep in mind that BMI is a terrible indicator. And if your weight's going up, but you're doing strength training and power training, it's likely because you're gaining more muscle, and that muscle is more metabolically active, and it's gonna help to use more calories throughout the day, but it may look like you've actually gained weight when the reality is that no, muscle is more dense and it's more healthy. So let's look at body fat percentage, waist circumference, how your clothes are fitting. Last thing we wanna touch on is with any diet, why do we eat? We eat for energy. In fact, when my wife and I were visiting Italy on our honeymoon, we were grocery shopping and we found this pasta jar. And you look at the translation of calorie and it actually translates to energy, because that's what calories are. They're energy. We eat, and then by digesting this food, metabolizing it, and letting the nutrients go throughout our body, it gives us energy to do the activities that are on our plate throughout the day. So when you're eating, ask that question, intuitive eating. Is this food giving me energy? Half an hour after I consume it, later that day, and the next morning. If it's not giving me energy, then it's probably not worth me consuming. Now to that, we do see that whole foods, non-processed foods, getting all three food groups in there, they tend to give us more energy than the ultra-processed sugary junk food. But everybody's a little bit different. So we want you to look at these building blocks of nutrition with a hope not nope mindset. What are your thoughts about what you're eating? When are you eating it? And can these feeding windows be changed so that they're not happening right after a stressful event? We want to develop the habits and the discipline around breaking down some of these behaviors that have been set up over time when we're stressed and we reach for these sugary snacks. And then we want to focus on those simple building blocks, getting proteins, carbs, and fats, making sure that they're coming from food sources that give you energy. And in doing that and building those blocks, that's what's going to help you to maintain the weight that you want to have over your lifespan. That's going to help you to have energy to, one, become a better athlete and to maintain your status as a lifelong athlete, but then two, in becoming hope. Because nobody likes a person that is hangry.